Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence in Call of Duty and in games in general. And if you're wondering why I look a little bit weirder, a little bit off, I'm not actually a deepfake AI generated Drifter, rather one of my studio lights broke as I sat down to record this commentary. Got one working and one dead, so we have a little bit of a harsh shadow here. But back onto the main topic, almost every gamer has probably noticed by now that there are bots in multiplayer. Sometimes it's like Battlefield where they let you know they're a bot. They have the bot clan tag and a very different kind of name. Sometimes the bot is just filling the server until people populate it, which I say is a good thing. Other times it can be painfully obvious, like in Fortnite. But then there are times when developers are much less forthcoming about what they're doing with bots in multiplayer games and how many people in your lobbies are real humans. Call of Duty Mobile is kind of notorious for this, but I'm pretty sure there are bots in regular MP Call of Duty as well. You do occasionally run into people exhibiting bizarre and bot-like behavior, and I guess they could just be bad, but the suspicion for the community, unproven I want to point out, has been for a long time that bots are in COD. You would think that the topic of this video would be complaining about these artificial fake people in my game, but that's not even the main thing to worry about because they're not even AI. Those are just really simple little script algorithms doing repetitive behaviors. Actual artificial intelligence, even large language models, are going to be much more impactful on gaming. So I want to talk about some things that are going to be possible in the very near future, and we're going to kind of alternate today. We're going to do positive, negative, and kind of jump back and forth. And the first thing I wanted to talk about being positive is that your AI companions in games, or summons or Aeons if you're doing Final Fantasy or whatever, could get much more sophisticated. AI could be used to give these NPCs much more personality. If you summon a cat, it can have a cat's personality. On top of that, it can remember things you talked about, it remembers your adventures, it knows about you. You really will be summoning a digital familiar to follow you around, and the best game I can think of to give an example from this would be Pokemon. Right now you catch Pokemon. They have variations, but for the most part they're random and generic. Imagine if you could actually raise your Pokemon, maybe not from birth because you catch them, but from their lowest evolution stage. The decisions you make with them not only change their stats, but significantly impact the Pokemon's personality and how it interacts with you, how it takes orders, etc., etc. You could literally talk to your pet Pikachu and it could Pika back, and you could just have subtitles down there, but it could understand you. You could, in theory, build a pseudo relationship with your Pokemon, which is insane. To pull back to Call of Duty, those AI squad mates you have in campaign that are kind of useless, they might be smart enough to know your playstyle and know ahead of time kind of what you want to do and set you up for success without you, the player, having to do a lot of dictating or telling. It could be quite impressive and a fun experience. Honestly, all of the NPCs in a massive game like, say, Final Fantasy or Honku Star Rail or what was that other, Genshin Impact and stuff like that, these NPCs could be AI run or just AI written, but the point is that they'll have properly fleshed out stories. Every single person that you talk to in a game could have a full story, a full life, a mission. They'll give you unique responses if you talk to them just through a mic or typing or whatever. And it could be done one of two ways. You could just hire an AI or pay for an AI, you don't really hire them, to bulk write out stories for everybody in your Final Fantasy village and kind of manage the routines of their lives that roughly fit that story. You could have it automatically generate things instead of just text prompts. It could really dynamically adjust the mission difficulty and wants based on you, the player. And what's a fun idea for me is that you could even have a villain tailored for you. You could kind of pick your own antagonist like it's Venture Brothers and you go to the Guild of Calamitous Intent and you say, you know what, I'm a really low-level hero. I'm going to be fighting Vincent St. Cloud today. So that's a real possibility for the future, and that sounds great. But we do got to talk about some negatives. And if we're talking about villainy, I think one of the biggest villains of this is going to be corporations. And one of the biggest groups of people they're going to impact are game developers. The gaming industry and tech industry are already going through massive layoffs. You see the news all the time. They swear up and down that this is part of a normal cyclical economy and that business models are changing. It has nothing to do with AI. But almost every single company doing these mass layoffs is also heavily investing in AI to replace those employees that they laid off. And there's nowhere that this is more true than the gaming industry, because gaming industry requires a lot of hours of work and talent and wages to be paid. So if an AI, even a large language model, not a true AGI, becomes advanced enough to where they can code something that's playable, they can make art, they can write stories, understand player psyche, etc., then an AI can do about 95% of the work on a video game, and the human touch might just be polishing a few things up, which is very scary. And the people that I feel the most worried about are ones that have technical skills like coding and optimization, because I suspect in the near future those are going to be much less in demand as the brute force method of doing anything with AI grows in popularity. I also worry about environment, NPC, background artists, any of the underappreciated artists that do work to make the maps look beautiful, to write stories for all the little PCs, to manage the styles. All these people are going to get laid off because their work is expensive, because there's a lot of it to do and you usually need a whole team of people. Thus, lots of game developers are on the chopping block for AI replacement. I don't think it's good for our economy, and it may not be good for games, but I promised you we're going to be alternating. Let's go back to a positive impact that AI could have on gaming. First and foremost, as we mentioned with these infinite stories of shopkeepers and NPCs that have detailed stories and can talk to you, if an AI is generating your game world on the fly, if we hit the point where it doesn't just like code a Fortnite and you play it, but it can kind of iteratively generate as you play through things, then you're talking about playing a game that's basically infinite. And despite replacing the human hand, this has a ton of potential for fun gaming. So you can imagine if you're playing Fallout or Skyrim, but with an infinite map where there's no borders, no edges, no radiation death zones or mountains or invisible walls. You can just go. You can walk across America in Fallout if you've got the time for it. And the AI will generate that for you on the fly at some degree of quality. Or imagine being able to play a game like Friday the 13th, but be able to apply proper real-world logic to it, interact with more things, call the police, set traps, figure it out. For horror games, it's insane. It could throw you into a different scenario every time. You might even see full cities with NPCs having AI lives and stories, not ones that are pre-written or scripted, but ones that are being dynamically generated based on what you, the player, have going on, which would basically be the fantasy world that Cyberpunk 2077 advertised with its immersive Night City and what was ultimately very repetitive NPCs, even below standards at the time. And what's crazy is this content might be unique for you. The game that you log in and play might have nothing to do with the game that somebody else is playing. It would be a lot like playing Dungeons & Dragons, if you're familiar. A huge chunk of that game is done with your imagination, which is why Wizards of the Coast is so heavily investing in AI. They want to make AI dungeon masters. But the point being that we basically have the technology right now to do AI dungeon master, at least text-based. The AI can guide you through a story and do things in D&D. If we take the next step to adding a graphics or GUI to that, then story games in general could get outrageously flexible. I'm not saying it's holodeck Star Trek, imagine anything, but they could be very, very flexible and people can have radically different experiences, which I think would be incredibly fun at a price. If we're dynamically generating things instead of having them fixed, that's going to use a lot of electricity. And I think that energy costs are going to be enormous on AI in gaming. There's already a massive strain on the power grid thanks to cryptocurrency mining. I know that, you stake your coins and mining is decreasing these days, but it's still a big strain. And there is every early indication that AI is going to be both more permanent than cryptocurrency and more demanding energy-wise. Almost every state, almost every country, they're all gearing up to increase their energy production, sometimes for energy independence, but really just so that their technology, their tech companies, their infrastructure don't get left behind in the AI revolution. It seems like we're getting away from gaming, but we're not. The point being that AI uses a lot of electricity. Electricity costs some amount of pollution to generate, even if it's from windmills or whatever. So in the future, with higher energy costs, and more pollution to generate your fake world, playing Xbox for an hour or two might pollute just as much as driving around a big rig truck like diesel engine for a couple hours. It really might have a huge impact on the environment and definitely will have a huge impact on your electricity bill as this demand increases. Electricity prices are just generally expected to increase over the next few years. Gaming might become a more expensive hobby because corporations aren't going to want to pay these hosting AI fees forever. They're going to try to find some way to pass that down to you, the consumer. Now we're getting kind of borderline between positive and negative. In the future of gaming, I expect to see AI training and cloning, in that we can clone or mimic famous gamers in the future. If we can build these bots to collect enough information about playstyles and matches and reaction times and stuff like that, then we could create, say, a reasonable facsimile of Shroud so that you can test your skills in a 1v1 against an AI that is almost exactly a clone of Shroud. We're going Westworld style here. So I think it'd be really cool to test your skills against the best gamers in the world and see how you stack up. On top of that, if you know they have fantasy football, they have fantasy esports now. The fantasy esport teams, if these people had clones or bots or duplicates of themselves put together, you could recruit your fantasy esport team and make it fight against other teams. Not theoretically, not on a point base, not on an actual performance base, but like clones of these people almost, which is kind of scary. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Faker versus Faker bot looks like in League of Legends. On top of this, you can train your AI to train you to be better at a game. You can build an AI coach, an AI esports coach, an AI aim trainer. It can identify your weaknesses, tell you where to brush up. It could be a coach, it could be a friend, family member, or you could just download like a digital version of Clayster who'll just load in and give you tips on how to aim better and where your weak spots are. And as much as that does sound kind of scary, and I do hope that these people get paid for their duplicates in their future, I do genuinely believe that could be a very fun experience if managed properly. And now we're on to the very last part of the video. The last part I wanted to talk about was mostly the effect of AI on player psychology, and this is where we're really diverging the furthest away from gaming in the conversation. And this video and small series is really a setup for the much bigger one of part 2 on changes that are coming in the real world very soon. But where we kind of blur the line is with gaming. So, for gaming today, I think AI is going to try to influence purchases in the future. You know how we have the engagement optimized matchmaking, and they're like, if you buy drop boxes or not drop boxes, loot boxes or some kind of skin or weapon camo or something, then you'll get easier lobbies, right? Well, imagine that, but on steroids. Imagine you have AI just like in South Park, the future pandemic special thing, where Alexa is constantly giving you advice and then telling you to just buy things. And it could set you up with AI companions that tell you need things. The companions that you game for years, the fake AI buddies, could push you toward purchase decisions, do very subtle psychological things to influence you. It can just put you in lobbies with people that have different, better stuff. And this might start off ham-fisted in the form of little AI pop-ups that tell you to buy things. But I imagine at some point in the future, it's going to get quite sophisticated and subtle. And I think the better psychological profile they have on you, they as in whatever gaming company, the easier this is going to be to do. It'll be especially easy if a company is able to buy your outside marketing data and combine that with what you're doing inside gaming. Because they can do prep ads on the outside marketing data, they can boost interest, they can work weasel words into your AI-generated content to sort of subconsciously push you in certain directions. But more than that, I think that video games are probably the best tool on the planet for collecting behavior data from human beings. You can learn a shocking amount about a player's mind by recording their gaming. You could tell, oh my God, you could tell roughly their IQ, their decision-making skills, good, bad, ugly, what type of decisions they lean toward, which ones they avoid, reaction times, fears, likes, dislikes, what degree of resiliency do they have, or tolerance for frustration, what heuristics they use to make decisions, the words, the language they use when they're talking to their friends, how they see themselves is something that the AI could probably suss out. So in the future, if you're playing games, you're not just forking over data about what websites you visited or how fast you can shoot, but little tiny pieces of how your psychology works, which makes that marketing data all the more powerful. And I really think that the way you interact with a game means that it has the potential to harvest more data than even somebody who browses the internet right now and always hits accept all cookies. This, I genuinely think, like Westworld style, like if you needed a ton of data to copy a person, recording the hours and hours and hours I've spent on a game, I've gone through almost every range of human emotion, almost every type of decision, almost every conversation. You could make a very nice facsimile of me if that data could be harvested, which I think is scary, and that's where this video is going to bleed over to part 2. Part 2 is not going to be gaming, it's going to be the same conversation, but all real life stuff, a lot of stuff about AI girlfriends, and that's coming in about a week or two. Production times are slow, but I'm on it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.